call the Wetlands Board meeting to order. The responsibility of this board is to carry out locally the Commonwealth policy to preserve the wetlands and to accommodate economic activity so as not to prevent their despoliation. Mr. Wilson, can we get a roll call, please?
Larry Waltrip.
Present.
Mike O'Brien.
Here.
Scott May.
Here.
Leslie Bowie.
Here.
And Chuck Roadley is absent.
Thank you, sir. All right, next section here, we'll go to a public comment period. The public comment period offers a chance for community members to express their opinions. Topics discussed shall not be directly related to specific public hearing items. To participate, speakers must provide their name and address for the record. Are there any members that wish to address the board in the public comment period? Please provide your name and address for the record and keep your comments to 5 minutes, please.
My name is Lisa Garber. I live at 115 Kings Point Drive in Kings Point. I'm here because I'd like to know accurate information from the horse's mouth, as the saying goes, about the spraying for the phragmites on College Creek. My understanding was that that was supposed to start today and continue into tomorrow. And neighborhood gossip says that that has been delayed. So my first question is, has it been delayed? My second question is, I'd like you to walk me through the process of which permissions were granted to do this, which agencies are going to be involved in doing this. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and I would appreciate hearing what the true story is.
Does the county have information to provide based on those questions?
We did talk to the gentleman who was proposing the activity, and he did agree to postpone for a couple days the spraying. Initially, it was to be done by helicopter, and it's since been clarified that it will be done by drone, approximately 8 to 10 feet above the ground level. That's all the information I have regarding that matter.
Yeah, that's not something that the five of us would be involved in.
Why not?
I don't believe a permit was a permit submitted, so that we only deal with permits that are submitted. So our visibility is the permits that come to us. We don't reach out beyond that.
The fact that there were no permits solicited or issued is the problem.
Ma'am, this is not the right forum for this discussion. We'd be happy to answer your questions at a later time, but this public comment period is not a give and take type scenario.
I think at this time it would be, I guess, wise to, you can certainly, express your concerns in the public meeting, and then that's something that we can certainly look into after the meeting and discuss. So
who would be the appropriate board to approach about this? I'm relatively new here.
I would think you would start with the county, would be my understanding.
Which branch of the county?
I'm not even.
At this point in time, the county does not have resources to deal with this subject matter, and we have not at this point in time required a permit. It is not a permittable activity in terms of our wetlands ordinance.
So it sounds like that's pretty much outside the scope of the wetland board's purview at this time.
What, if you'll indulge me, I think I'm still under my 5 minutes. What is the purview of the Wetlands Board? As I said, I am new here.
Well, we essentially ensure, just like I mentioned in the opening remarks, and I can reread that, we are to preserve the wetlands and to accommodate economic activity so as to prevent their despoliation. So in the title, wetlands, that's our purview here on the Wetlands Board.
Do you have anything to do with maintaining the integrity of the wetlands?
We look at applications that come to us for approval. We're not involved in inspection, after, maintenance type things.
So if people have a concern over how the wetlands are being managed or not managed, this is not the board to come to.
I
Mr.
think you-
Waltrip, are you going to speak to this?
I would say probably if, and
Mr. Waltrip, hold on. Ma'am, this is not a question and answer session. Please put your questions in writing. I'll give you a business card. We'll get them answered. I told you this is not the proper forum. This is not a back and forth discussion.
I thank you very much for the help that you didn't offer. And this is my first public meeting in the state of Virginia. Forgive me if I've come to the wrong board, but wetlands is in the name, so that's why I thought I would come here. If I find anything out that might be useful, I'll come back to another meeting and I'll share that with you guys because you don't seem to know much about wetlands. Your card, please.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else that wishes to address the board during the public comment period? All right, seeing none, I will close the public comment period. Next matter is the approval of minutes from the September 13th meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from that meeting? All right, do I have a motion to accept those minutes?
Motion to accept the minutes from the previous meeting.
Thank you for the motion to accept. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? No opposed. Motion carries. The meeting minutes are accepted. Next section here, board considerations. We need to elect a new board secretary in the absence of Trevor Long. He's vacated the secretary position, so we'll need to appoint a new secretary. Do I have any motions to nominate a secretary?
I move to nominate Robin Benedict to serve as secretary of the board.
Thank you. So Robin Benedict has been nominated to serve as the secretary. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No opposed. The motion carries. Robin Benedict is appointed as the new board secretary. The outline for tonight's public hearings will be a staff presentation followed by any questions or clarifications from the board. Then the public hearing will be opened. At that time, anybody wishing to speak may do so once called upon by the chair. All public speakers must state their name and address for the record. Presentations before the board are subject to time limits. After everyone wishing to speak has done so and discussion among the board has concluded, the public hearing will be closed. And first on the agenda here is WJPA-23-0017. Ms. Benedict.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Robin Benedict, Watershed Planner, presenting WJPA 23-0017. Mr. Andrew Gurley with CLS Marine has applied for a wetlands permit on behalf of Miss Emily and Mr. Mike Colon for the approval of riprap on property located at 733 Arlington Island Road within the Diaskin Creek watershed. The parcel is outlined above in blue. The watershed is shown in yellow. Here's aerial photography of the entire property and zoomed in on the project area here. The topography at the site, which is fairly flat. The entirety of the site is within the floodplain as well. The applicants are requesting the approval of an existing unpermitted riprap area along the shoreline of the property. That area is shown by this orange X. This riprap was installed by the previous property owners without the approval of a wetlands permit. Therefore, staff are requesting that this unpermitted riprap be permitted tonight through this board. Additionally, here's a cross-section. Since this project falls between mean high and mean low water, It does have to be heard by the board tonight. Here is photography of the riprap on site. As published in the Virginia Register on July 11th, 2005, the revised wetland mitigation compensation policy and supplemental guidelines, Virginia, as a Chesapeake Bay program partner, is committed to achieve a no net loss of existing wetlands acreage and function in the signatories' regulatory programs. In order for a proposed project to be authorized to impact wetlands and compensate for the wetland loss in some prescribed manner, the following 3 criteria must be met. All reasonable mitigative efforts, including alternative siting, which would eliminate or minimize wetland loss, must be incorporated into the proposal. The proposal must clearly be water dependent in nature, and the proposal must demonstrate clearly its need to be in the wetlands and its overwhelming public and private benefits. If the proposed project cannot meet one or more of the above criteria, the project must be denied or must occur in areas outside of wetlands. Should it satisfy all 3 criteria, however, compensation for the wetland loss is required. The sequence of acceptable mitigation options should be as follows: on-site, off-site within the same watershed, mitigation banks in the same watershed, or a payment of an in lieu fee. If compensation is required, it should be a condition of the permit. Staff has reviewed this application and finds that this project meets the 3 criteria outlined above. Staff cannot determine if there were vegetated wetlands present when the structure was constructed, and have therefore decided that there are no vegetated impacts to wetlands associated with this project and that there should not be a mitigation component. Staff has reviewed the above application and recommends approval of the application as presented. Should the board wish to approve this application, staff suggests the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicants must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for the project. All development activities located in the specified flood hazard area shall comply with Article 6, Division 3 Floodplain Area Regulations and receive all required approval and permits prior to commencement of such activities. The wetlands permit for this project shall expire on October 11th, 2026, and if an extension of the permit is needed, a written request must be submitted to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division no later than August 30th, 2026, which is 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Benedict. Any questions for Ms. Benedict?
Is it just approval for the existing, or is there going to be something else in the 900 feet?
This is just for approval of the existing. The additional project is outside the purview of this board.
Thank you, Ms. Benedict. I'd like to now open the floor for a public comment. Does anyone from the public wish to speak on this matter? Seeing no one, I will close the public comment period, and this matter is before the board for discussion.
I don't see anything wrong with it.
I don't see any issue with the existing.
I mean, this seems reasonable to me. Do I have a motion on the floor regarding this matter?
I'll do it. I make a motion to adopt a resolution to grant the case number WJPA 230017, VMRC 202312252 at 733 Arlington Island Road.
Thank you, Mr. Waltrip. Mr. Wilson?
Motion is to adopt. Mr. Waltrip,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Ms. Bowie,
Yes.
Mr. May.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. I see no matters of special privilege on the agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn the Wetlands Board meeting?
Motion to adjourn?
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you. Meeting's adjourned. All right, now on to the Chesapeake Bay Board meeting. I'd like to call that meeting to order. The responsibility of this board is to carry out locally the Commonwealth policy to protect against and minimize pollution and deposition of sediment in wetlands, streams, and lakes in James City County, which are tributaries of the Chesapeake Bay. I'd like to open the floor for public comment. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Can we go ahead and do a roll call, Mr. Wilson?
Mr. Waltrip?
Here.
Mr. O'Brien?
Here.
Mr. May?
Here.
Ms. Bowie?
Here.
Mr. Roadley is absent.
Thank you. So now I would like to open the public comment period. The public comment period offers a chance for community members to express their opinions. Topics discussed shall not be directly related to specific public hearing items. To participate, speakers must provide their name and address for the record. Is there anyone wishing to speak during the public comment period? Seeing no one, I will close the public comment period and move on to the minutes from the September 13th board meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes? All right. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes from September 13th as presented.
I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's everyone. The motion passes. Minutes are approved. Board considerations. Election of officer for the board secretary, since Trevor Long has vacated that position. Do we have a motion on the floor to nominate a board secretary for the Chesapeake Bay Board?
I move to nominate Robin Benedict to serve as board secretary for the Chesapeake Bay Board.
Thank you. There was a motion to nominate Robin Benedict to serve as the secretary for the Chesapeake Bay Board. Can I get a roll call, Mr. Wilson? Voice vote's fine. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's everyone. No opposed. All right, now we'll open the public hearing period. The outline for tonight's public hearing will be a staff presentation, followed by any questions or clarifications from the board. Then the public hearing will be opened. At that time, anybody wishing to speak may do so once called upon by the chair. All public speakers must state their name and address for the record. Presentations before the board are subject to time limits. After everyone wishing to speak has done so and discussion among the board has concluded, the public hearing will be closed. And the first item on the agenda for tonight is CBPA-23-0109. Ms. Benedict.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Robin Benedict, Watershed Planner. Before presenting this case tonight, I would like to remind everyone that since we have only 4 members, 3 affirmative votes will be required to pass a motion. Ms. Erica Bridget with GC Commercial has applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception on behalf of Ms. Courtney and Mr. Benjamin Krykar for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the construction of a screened-in porch and deck located at 3508 Pine Ridge Road within the Fenwick Hills subdivision in the Ware Creek watershed. The parcel is outlined here in blue, watershed is in yellow. This parcel was platted in 2006 after the changes to the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 2004. Above is the subject parcel, along with topography at the site and the resource protection area. This property is 0.23 acres, of which 70% is located within the RPA. The applicants are proposing to remove the existing 160 square foot deck, which is seen here in green, and construct a new screened-in porch and deck at the rear of the home. The screened-in porch and deck are shown here in yellow, so a portion of that will be going where the existing deck is located. Additionally, on the site plan, you will see the 100-foot and 50-foot RPAs. Impacts to the RPA associated with this proposal equate to 92 square feet of impacts to the landward 50-foot RPA and 90 square feet of impacts to the seaward 50-foot RPA for a total of 182 square feet of new impervious cover. Again, those impacts are shown, by these yellow areas here, mostly where the screened-in porch is proposed to be located. Required mitigation for this amount of impervious impacts equals 7 shrubs. An additional view of this proposal flipped around this time, the house being at the top of the page with the screened-in porch at the edge of the home, and then the newly proposed deck and its stairs. Here is photography of the existing deck, which is failing at this time and currently not usable. The area of the screened-in porch will be right in front of it, and then again, the new deck partially where this deck is currently. And a look back towards the ravine where the RPA is stemming from. Staff has evaluated the application and exception request for the construction of a screened-in porch and deck. This application meets the ordinance conditions in sections 23-11 and 23-14 and should be heard by the board because the construction of a screened-in porch and deck is considered accessory in nature. The board may grant exceptions to section 23-7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions. The exception request is the minimum necessary to afford relief. Granting the exception will not confer upon the applicants any special privileges denied to other property owners in the vicinity. The exception request will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of Chapter 23 and is not of substantial detriment to water quality. The exception request is not based on conditions or circumstances that are self-created or self-imposed, and reasonable conditions are imposed which will prevent the exception request from causing a degradation of water quality. Staff has reviewed the application and exception request and has determined the impacts associated with this proposal to be minor for the proposed development. Staff recommends approval for this exception request, and if the board wishes to approve the request, staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicants must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for the project. The applicants must submit a mitigation plan equating to 7 shrubs to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division prior to project start. The applicants must submit a surety of $250 in a form acceptable to the James City County Attorney's Office to guarantee the mitigation plantings. This exception request approval will become null and void if construction has not begun by October 11th, 2024, and written request for an extension must be submitted to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division no later than August 30th, 2024, which is 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. Are there any questions? Happy to answer them at this time.
Any questions for Ms. Benedict?
It's not even one planning unit of mitigation? Is it?
Correct.
Okay, so it's just a marginal increase from 160 to 180 square feet, something like that?
Correct.
Okay.
Are there any trees that have to be removed to put this new porch on?
I don't believe so, but the applicant can specify that.
Yeah,
We can have you address
just wait until the public hearing is
Yeah.
opened and then come up and address, if you would, please.
All right, any more questions for Ms. Benedict? All right, thank you, Ms. Benedict. I'd like to open up the public comment period on this particular case. If there are any members of the public that wish to speak, please present your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Kevin Warren. I'm with GC Commercial, the contractor. And our address is 3 Pennington Avenue, Newport News. And no, there are no trees that would be taken out for this.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Any additional questions for Mr. Warren?
Is, the porch area, what's underneath the porch area? Is it just the normal ground, or are you?
Yeah, currently it's just a mixture of weeds, and there's very little grass that'll grow back there.
How high is this porch above the ground level of that new section?
It's probably gonna be about 4 feet high, where it'll come down and step down from the house to the deck.
Additional questions for Mr. Warren? Thank you, Mr. Warren, for your comments.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public wish to address the board on this matter? Thank you. Seeing none, close the public comment period, and the matter is before the board. I guess I would like to start by saying that this seems to be a very reasonable request with minor impacts, and I would, for one, support the application. Do I have a motion?
Move to adopt the resolution to grant the exception request for case number CBPA 23-0109 at 3508 Pine Ridge Road.
Thank you. So we have a motion to adopt the resolution. Mr. Wilson?
Motion to adopt. Mr. Waltrip?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Ms. Bowie?
Yes.
Mr. May?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Next on the agenda, CBPA-23-0106. Again, Ms. Benedict.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Robin Benedict, Watershed Planner, presenting CBPA 23-0106. Ms. Shirley and Mr. James Fast have applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the construction of an outdoor kitchen, patio, and fire pit located at 97 Shellbank Drive within the Shellbank subdivision and the James River watershed. Parcel is shown here, outlined in blue. This parcel was platted in 1973 prior to the adoption of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 1990. Above is aerial photography of the property, topography at the site, the floodplain as it affects this property, and the resource protection area. The total lot size of the property is 1.39 acres, of which 65% is located within the RPA. The applicants are proposing to construct an outdoor kitchen, patio, and fire pit behind the existing home. This area is shown here in yellow. You'll also find the 100-foot and 50-foot RPA shown, as well as the edge of wetlands here in green. As a little bit of a closer look at the plans, here you'll find the outdoor kitchen section, the proposed fire pit patio, or proposed fire pit area, and then the patio. Total impacts to the RPA associated with this proposal equate to 836 square feet of impacts to the landward 50-foot RPA. Required mitigation for this amount of impervious impacts equals 2 planting units, or 2 canopy trees, 4 understory trees, and 6 shrubs. The applicants have provided a mitigation plan shown above, which satisfies this mitigation requirement. Here is site photography. This patio is proposed within this fenced-in area. Looking at the house and the proposed area. Staff has evaluated the application and exception request for the construction of an outdoor kitchen, patio, and fire pit. This application meets the ordinance conditions in sections 23-11 and 23-14 and should be heard by the board because construction of a patio and fire pit is considered accessory in nature. The board may grant exceptions to section 23-7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions. The exception request is the minimum necessary to afford relief. Granting the exception will not confer upon the applicants any special privileges denied to other property owners in the vicinity. The exception request will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of Chapter 23 and is not of substantial detriment to water quality. The exception request is not based on conditions or circumstances that are self-created or self-imposed, and reasonable conditions are imposed which will prevent the exception request from causing a degradation of water quality. Staff has reviewed the application and exception request and has determined the impacts associated with this proposal to be moderate for the proposed development. Staff recommends approval for this exception request, and if the board wishes to approve the request, staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicants must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for the project. The applicants must submit a surety of $2,000 in a form acceptable to the James City County Attorney's Office to guarantee the mitigation plantings. This exception request approval will become null and void if construction has not begun by October 11th, 2024, and written request for an extension must be submitted to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division no later than August 30th, 2024, which is 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. If there are any questions, be happy to answer them at this time.
Any questions for Ms. Benedict? I have just one question. So in the backyard there, I know there's a decent elevation change from the point where this is being built down to the water. Is that terraced? Is there like retaining walls going towards the river there? Is it relatively flat where this is being proposed?
It is a sloped yard down towards the water, but to my recollection, there are no retaining walls. It's just a natural slope.
Thank you.
Is that another one where the grass will be underneath the deck area? Or is this coming out level, like 4 feet above?
I believe this is a paver patio, so it won't be elevated.
Well, no, okay.
Any other questions for Ms. Benedict? Hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Benedict. I'd like to open the public comment period for this case. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this matter? Seeing no one, I'll close the public comment period, and the matter is before the board.
It's pretty straightforward to me with minimal impact.
Seems to be, just, moderate impact. This seems to be, a reasonable request. They're building it right up against the house. They're not going out towards the river there. It's as close to the house as you can put it. I would certainly support this request. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Do I have a motion?
All right, I'll do it. I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution to grant the exception request for the Chesapeake Bay Board, case number CBPA 23-0106 at 97 Shellbank Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Waltrip. I have a motion to adopt. Mr. Wilson?
Motion is to adopt. Mr. Waltrip,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Ms. Bowie,
Yes.
Mr. May.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you, sir. Next case on the agenda, CBPA-23-0113. Ms. Benedict? Again?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Robin Benedict, Watershed Planner, presenting CBPA 23-0113. Mr. Ronald Curtis with Ronald Curtis Builders has applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception on behalf of Ms. Mary and Mr. Thomas Wilkinson for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the construction of a deck and landing located at 1580 Harbor Road within the Governor's Land subdivision and the Gordon Creek watershed. The parcel is down here, outlined in blue. Here is aerial photography at this site. This parcel was platted in 1994 after the adoption of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 1990. Here is topography at the site, the floodplain as it affects this property, and the resource protection area. The total lot size of the property is 0.3 acres, of which 60% is located within the RPA. The applicants are proposing to expand the existing deck off the back of the house, which is shown on this site plan in green, and also construct a landing with the deck expansion. The existing deck is approximately 115 square feet, and the proposed expansion is 65 square feet, along with the proposed landing, which is 18 square feet. This gives us a total of 83 square feet of new impervious to the landward 50-foot RPA. And the RPA, the 100-foot is shown here, and the 50-foot RPA shown back here. Required mitigation for this amount of impervious impacts equals 4 shrubs. So here is site photography showing the existing deck off of the back of the house and the area of the proposed expansion and landing as well. Staff has evaluated the application and exception request for the construction of a deck and landing. This application meets the ordinance conditions in sections 23-11 and 23-14 and should be heard by the board because the construction of a deck and landing is considered accessory in nature. The board may grant exceptions to section 23-7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions. The exception request is the minimum necessary to afford relief. Granting the exception will not confer upon the applicants any special privileges denied to other property owners in the vicinity. The exception request will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of Chapter 23 and is not of substantial detriment to water quality. The exception request is not based on conditions or circumstances that are self-created or self-imposed, and reasonable conditions are imposed which will prevent the exception request from causing a degradation of water quality. Staff has reviewed the application and exception request and has determined the impacts associated with this proposal to be minor for the proposed development. Staff recommends approval for this exception request, and if the board wishes to approve the request, staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicants must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for the project. The applicants must submit a mitigation plan equating to 4 shrubs to the Stormwater and Resource Protection Division prior to project start. The applicants must submit a surety of $250 in a form acceptable to the James City County Attorney's Office to guarantee these mitigation plantings. The exception request approval will become null and void if construction has not begun by October 11th, 2024, and written requests for an extension must be submitted no later than August 30th, 2024, which is 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. If there are any questions, be happy to answer them at this time.
Questions for Ms. Benedict? Questions? Thank you, Ms. Benedict. I'd like to open up the floor for public comment on this matter.
Good evening, members of the board. Chase Grog with Land Tech Resources, 205 Bullifonts Boulevard, Suite E, Williamsburg, Virginia. Can you go back to the site plan, Mike? Thanks. Pretty straightforward on this one. Just a small existing deck that the homeowners pretty much, there's an existing door on the left side here and a door on the right side, so it's pretty much just a pathway at the moment, just trying to get a little bit of space to have a little bit of a seating area and walk around. As you may remember from some other cases along this street, there's an existing berm here where a majority of the water goes to the existing stormwater system that was put behind these lots. So relatively simple, just trying to make a small deck a little bit bigger. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for Mr. Groggs? Thank you so much. Any other members of the public wish to speak on the matter? And seeing none, I will close the public comment period, and the matter is before the board.
Like a very minor improvement, I will support.
I agree, Mr. Waltrip. I think this certainly is in the landward 50 feet. It's a minor impact. I would certainly support it as well. All right, do I have a motion?
Motion to adopt the resolution to grant the exception request for Chesapeake Bay Board case number CBPA 23-0113 at 1580 Harbor Road.
I have a motion to adopt. Mr. Wilson?
Motion is to adopt. Mr. Waltrip?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Ms. Bowie?
Yes.
Mr. May?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you, sir. Next on the agenda, CBPA-23-0101. Ms. Benedict?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Robin Benedict, Watershed Planner, presenting CBPA 23-0101. Mr. Ryan Linekin with Williams Landscape and Design has applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception on behalf of Miss Amy and Mr. Paul McClendon for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the installation of a patio located at 104 Colonel's Way within the Kingsmill subdivision and the College Creek watershed. The subject parcel can be seen here in blue. This parcel was platted in 1978 prior to the adoption of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 1990. Here is aerial photography of the site. You'll see in this photograph that there is an existing retaining wall on the property. CBPA 20-0143 was approved administratively in January of 2021, and that plan included the removal and replacement of a failing retaining wall and the removal of a wooden walkway. This approval was prior to the changes to the retaining wall ordinance. Just wanted to let the board know about the situation with that retaining wall. Also at the property, the topography very sloped past the existing retaining wall, but flat in the area of proposed construction. And the resource protection area, this lot is 0.71 acres, of which 58% is located within the RPA. The applicants are proposing to remove the existing deck and install a new patio. So you'll see the 100-foot and 50-foot RPA shown here in red. The existing patio is this green hatched area. This area and the yellow are is the area of the proposed patio. Additionally, they are proposing to remove 274 square feet of an existing walkway, and that area is shown here in red. Total impacts associated with this proposal equate to 143 square feet of new impervious cover in the landward 50-foot RPA. That new impervious, again, is shown just by this yellow area above. Required mitigation for this amount of impervious impacts equals 6 shrubs. The applicants have provided a mitigation plan that includes 31 shrubs and an infiltration trench, therefore satisfying county mitigation requirements. That shrubbery is shown here in green with the infiltration trench directly behind them. Here is site photography standing at the existing walkway, the portion of which will be removed, and looking towards a portion of the existing deck. The existing deck, the proposed will bump out of the yard a little bit further, shown partially by these flags. And again, looking back towards that walkway, part of which will be removed. Staff has evaluated the application and exception request for the installation of a patio. This application meets the ordinance conditions in sections 23-11 and 23-14 and should be heard by the board because the installation of a patio is considered accessory in nature. The board may grant exceptions to section 23-7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions. The exception request is the minimum necessary to afford relief. Granting the exception will not confer upon the applicants any special privileges denied to other property owners in the vicinity. The exception request will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of Chapter 23 and is not of substantial detriment to water quality. The exception request is not based on conditions or circumstances that are self-created or self-imposed, and reasonable conditions are imposed which will prevent the exception request from causing a degradation of water quality. Staff has reviewed the application and exception request and has determined the impacts associated with this proposal to be minor for the proposed development. Staff recommends approval for this exception request, and if the board wishes to approve this request, staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicants must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for this project. The applicants must submit a surety of $250 in a form acceptable to the James City County Attorney's Office to guarantee the mitigation plantings. This exception request approval will become null and void if construction has not begun by October 11th, 2024, and written requests for an extension must be submitted no later than August 30th, 2024, which is 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Benedict. Any questions, Ms. Benedict?
Yeah, that removal piece, that will become pervious after removal? The
Correct. To my knowledge, it will just become a grass area with perhaps some shrubbery.
And did you net that out of the impact?
Yes,
Okay, so it negated the impact of the yellow.
yes. So they have some shrubbery here as landscape, but to my knowledge, and the applicant can clarify, it will become a grass area.
And that green portion is added to create more drainage or infiltration behind the retaining wall?
Yes.
Okay, and the retaining wall is the purple, or is it just not shown?
No, the retaining wall is
Oh,
right
it's
in
the
front
black.
of the
Okay.
shrubs. The purple is the infiltration trench.
Okay. That's part of the project.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Benedict. To open the floor for public comment, if there's anyone from the public wishing to speak, please present your name and address for the record.
Brian Leniken with Williams Landscape and Design, 1554 Penniman Road, Williamsburg. Just to answer a couple of those questions real quick, the space at the end of the driveway there that's being negated and pulled out will be planting bed space. So it'll be plants and then mulch in that area. And then the remaining area that's turf now will remain as turf, except for where the new patio is going in.
Did I understand that the green area is gonna be removed?
Yeah, that's existing decking right now, raised decking, and has some brick pillars. If you want to go back to one of the site pictures there, all of that's being removed, and then the patio will be in on ground level. So all of the aggregate concrete from the corner of the house back to the existing shed, and then the walkway that leads to these raised decks will all be removed.
Any additional questions?
Could you just describe briefly the infiltration that you're doing there?
Yeah, we just put that in mostly because of the added space of the patio in that grass area that's right now lawn, and then dropped some shrubs in there, and then put the infiltration trench down on the lower side just to keep some open lawn space on the upper side of that existing retaining wall.
Any additional questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak on the matter? Seeing none, I will close the public comment period, and the matter is before the board. I think for this one, they certainly have, I think, gone above and beyond the, instead of 6 shrubs, 31 shrubs and the infiltration trench, and also returning some of that impervious to pervious. So I certainly would support this as proposed.
I concur.
Do I have a motion?
I move to accept the deferral request for case number,
Have
oops,
to do
sorry,
the, adopt the resolution.
adopt the
Below
resolution.
that.
I've lost my spot here. For case number CBPA 23-0101 at 104 Colonel's Way.
Thank you. I have a motion to adopt the resolution. Mr. Wilson?
Motion to adopt, Mr. Waltrip,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Ms. May, I'm sorry, Ms. Bowie,
Yes.
Mr. May.
Yes.
I apologize. Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. All right, last case on the agenda, CBPA-23-0083. Again, Miss Benedict. Getting your steps in this evening.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Robin Benedict, Watershed Planner, presenting CBPA 23-0083. Miss Angela Whitehead with Soil Horizons has applied for a Chesapeake Bay exception on behalf of Miss Sherry and Mr. John Constantino for encroachments into the RPA buffer for the construction of a single-family dwelling with an attached deck located at 113 Glasgow within the Ford's Colony subdivision in the Powhatan Creek watershed. The parcel is shown here outlined in blue. This parcel was platted in 1988 prior to the adoption of the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Ordinance in 1990. Here's aerial photography of the property, the topography at the site, the floodplain as it affects this property, and the resource protection area. 100% of this 0.27 acre property is within the RPA. Existing conditions of this property include a wooded lot with wetlands through the middle and back of the lot, as well as the floodplain that was shown on the previous slide. Additionally, this property drains directly to wetlands, as indicated by these arrows. The applicants are proposing to construct a single-family dwelling with an attached deck. On this site plan, you will see that the resource protection area is not delineated due to the proximity to the wetlands on the property. But the areas in green are the wetlands as they affect the property. Additionally, the house is outlined here in orange. 100% of the proposed single-family dwelling is within the seaward 50-foot RPA. Total impacts to the RPA associated with this proposal equate to 3,011 square feet of impacts to the seaward 50-foot RPA. Additionally, there are 1,678 square feet of permanent wetland impacts proposed with the construction of this house. Also on this site plan, just to note, the building setback limits are shown here in blue, and then the limits of clearing around the property in black. The minimum first floor square footage required for this section of Ford's Colony is 1,100 square feet. This proposed residence has a first floor square footage equal to 1,259 square feet, which is a 14% increase. Required mitigation for this amount of impervious impacts equals 7.5 planting units, which are 7 canopy trees, 14 understory trees, and 27 shrubs. Staff is also requesting that an affidavit be recorded in the Williamsburg, James City County Courthouse due to the environmental sensitivity of this lot. Here is site photography standing at the road and looking in towards the property. Standing more in the middle of the lot and looking towards the back of the property and across the midsection of the wetlands. Also of note, between this property and the house adjacent to it is the culvert, which handles the drainage on this property. Staff has evaluated the application and exception request for the construction of a single-family dwelling with an attached deck. This application meets the ordinance conditions in sections 23-11 and 23-14 and should be heard by the board because the construction of the single-family dwelling is entirely within the seaward 50-foot RPA. The board may grant exceptions to section 23-7 if the application meets the following 5 conditions. The exception request is the minimum necessary to afford relief. Granting the exception will not confer upon the applicants any special privileges denied to other property owners in the vicinity. The exception request will be in harmony with the purpose and intent of Chapter 23 and is not of substantial detriment to water quality. The exception request is not based on conditions or circumstances that are self-created or self-imposed, and reasonable conditions are imposed which will prevent the exception request from causing a degradation of water quality. Staff has reviewed the application and exception request and has determined the impacts associated with this proposal to be major for the proposed development. Staff recommends denial for this exception request, but if the board wishes to approve the request, staff recommends the following conditions be incorporated into the approval. The applicants must obtain all other necessary federal, state, and local permits as required for the project. An affidavit must be recorded in the Williamsburg-James City County Courthouse prior to the issuance of a building permit. The applicants must submit a mitigation plan equating to 7.5 planting units prior to project start. The applicants must submit a surety of $5,625 in a form acceptable to the James City County Attorney's Office to guarantee the mitigation plantings. Construction of this single-family dwelling will not create flooding or drainage issues to surrounding properties. This exception request approval will become null and void if construction has not begun by October 11th, 2024, and written requests for an extension must be submitted no later than August 30th, 2024, which is 6 weeks prior to the expiration date. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Questions for Ms. Benedict?
Ms. Benedict, could you go back to the site plan to point out the culvert that you, site plan?
That culvert is right here, and it drains between the two properties.
All right.
Ms. Benedict, is it, the only mitigation here is the planting units? There is no additional mitigation measures as far as treating water?
Correct.
On the
No
site.
additional mitigation has been proposed at this time.
Thank you.
Go back to the one that shows the other homes around that in the floodplain. Go back, go forward one, the one you had before that. All of the other homes in that area are in the same floodplain area.
Correct. This map above is showing the resource protection area, and many of the surrounding homes, as shown in green, are affected by the RPA.
If I may address Mr. Waltrip's concern about the floodplain. In this picture, Mr. Waltrip, you will notice there's 3 existing houses in that, in this graphic that are in the floodplain. Floodplain concerns are not the subject of the purview of this board. We just wanted to highlight them for knowledge sake. Any action you make on this application should not be related to a floodplain concern, other than the condition which we requested that development of this property not increase flooding impacts on the surrounding or drainage impacts on the surrounding properties.
Any additional questions for Ms. Benedict?
Yeah, I've got one. So in terms of looking at those profiles, if you've got runoff from the property, it moves to the right, kind of it feeds through an area for a house just to the right of it. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Benedict. Any members of the public wish to comment on this particular application? Please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Angela Whitehead, 2 Whitaker's Mill Road here in Williamsburg, Virginia, 23185. I served as the environmental consultant on this project, delineated the wetlands, and we have secured U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Wetland Nationwide Permit 18 for impacts to those wetlands. In our conversations with staff or correspondence with staff, their main concern was the square footage of the home exceeding Ford's Colony's minimum. Ford's Colony's minimum is 1,100 square feet in that area. This proposed home is 1,259 square feet. If you look at the neighboring existing homes, as you notice, that are closer to the wetlands of Chisel Run and closer to the floodplain, further into the 50-foot seaward RPA. 115 Glasgow is a 0.3 acre lot. Its first floor square footage is 2,007 square feet, which is an 82% increase. 117 Glasgow is a 0.26 acre lot. That square footage is 3,454 square feet, which is a 215% increase over Ford's Colony's minimum. 119 Glasgow is 0.28 acres. That square footage is 3,477 square feet, again 216% larger. And finally, 118 Glasgow, which is 0.36 acres, is 2,576 square feet, 134% larger. Those first floor footages were just scaled from the county's GIS, and that's the home itself. That doesn't include driveways as far as impervious. But again, the floor plan that the owner selected is only 14% larger. So it's much smaller in impact than existing homes that are closer to the wetland area. Your concerns or questions about floodplain and flooding, obviously if there's a 100-year storm, the homes that are closer to that floodplain are going to be impacted by the Chisel Run overflow and not necessarily from surface water coming off of this lot. Due to kind of the unique nature and location of this lot, the flow needed to be graded and captured by that existing stormwater infrastructure, the concrete ditch that exists between this lot and I believe it's 115. So that accounts for our limits of disturbance. The limits of disturbance was reduced after county comment from 11,687 square feet down to 10,039 square feet. As I mentioned, we have obtained a nationwide permit, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, for wetland impacts. And as you stated, this is a pre-bay lot, so once RPA ordinances were enacted, the entirety of the lot falls within that 50-foot RPA, the 50-foot seaward RPA. And I'll do my best to answer any kind of engineering site plans questions for you.
Anybody have questions?
Do we have any, oh, excuse me.
Go ahead.
Do we have any idea when those other 3 houses were constructed?
I did not check, no, but no, I don't know. I don't know if staff could pull that up from GIS or not, but.
Not at the moment. Ms. Bowie, I can tell you, I believe those houses have been in place for 15 plus years. I don't remember, I've been with the county for 23 years and I don't remember those houses having gone through the building permit process since I've been here. It's not to say they haven't, I just don't remember.
And one other question, one gentleman had asked about on-site BMPs. The site conditions and soil, obviously there's an amount of wetlands on there which makes the most of the soils in that lot not conducive to on-site BMPs.
Do you know with the existing drainage structure that's there that, I mean, it appears to be pretty, you probably put in a long time ago. Is that sufficient to handle the stormwater and water coming off of this proposed?
Yes, the
property?
project engineer did sizing calculations to ensure that it's sufficiently sized to receive stormwater from this project. And those were provided to staff.
So the wetlands are identified in green.
Correct.
If this project were to proceed and be completed, am I to assume that those wetlands would disappear?
Where you see shaded yellow, yes. Where you see, obviously, where the house is going, and then where proposed grading is occurring, then yes, those wetlands, to some extent, are going to be removed, but because of the design, we're capturing surface water along the kind of the left-hand side of the lot and routing it around the back. I would imagine some of that area in the back is going to revert to a wetter feature. But those wetlands extended, made a connection, because the reason the RPA is where it is because those wetlands extended and made a connection through 115 Glasgow to the Chisel Run wetlands.
Additional questions? Thank you so much for your comments.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak on this matter from the public? Seeing none, I will close the public comment period, and the matter is before the board.
I mean, we've been reviewing quite a few of these ones in Ford's Colony. And they've all been tough because they're the last lots remaining, so they've been really difficult to weigh in on. But one of the things that we've been trying to be fairly consistent about is the minimum necessary. Even though the sites adjacent or near adjacent have far exceeded the minimum necessary in terms of square footage, this one does as well, although it's by, I think it was 12%. But that's been a fairly consistent approach that we've taken on these lots. Plus, we've also looked for other mitigation efforts to be adhered to or to be looked at to offset some of the water detriment and degradation issues. And I don't really see much offered there other than to use the existing culvert.
I agree with your comments. Certainly the applicant has, reduced the size of the structure in relation to the comps in the area, but I know that, this board, and I know we have tried to be consistent with the minimum necessary to afford relief. And I also would like to see additional mitigation measures in place. We've seen those in the past, so I agree with your comments, and I certainly have concerns about this particular request.
I'll chime in on this a little bit. I don't see, I see you had three or four other homes around there, and they've been in there for about 15 years. I see no public comment from surrounding neighbors that they've had problems with water flooding or anything like that. So it must not be a concern to the neighbors around there that on that elevation that those houses are built on in that floodplain area. So I would have thought that the neighbors would have been on top of this one being in the location that it is, and I've heard nothing about that whatsoever. So with the efforts and the plans that I see here, I think you've done all you can do as far as that lot's concerned to make it work. Maybe a little more mitigation towards it, I don't know. I'm on the fence on this one.
These are definitely tough cases in Ford's Colony that we've seen.
I do have some concerns about the impact this will have on the wetlands, the existing wetlands. I think it's fairly significant.
one that can be deferred, if the applicant wanted to look at it a little bit closer, or is it something that's not something that we do, it's something that they would have to instigate, but,
I think in the past, the applicant has had an opportunity to request a deferral prior to the board making a motion. Mr. Wilson, do I open the public comment period back to do that, or?
The applicant has indicated they want an up or down vote.
Thank you. All right, is there a, do I have a motion regarding this matter?
I'm going to make a motion to deny the application for the exception request for Chesapeake Bay Board case CBPA 23-0083 at 113 Glasgow.
I have a motion to deny. Mr. Wilson?
The motion is to deny, and a yes vote is for denial. Mr. Waltrip?
no.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Ms. Bowie?
Yes.
Mr. May?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-1.
All right, thank you. I don't see any matters of special privilege. Do I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.